Africa, and welcome to another mind-boggling episode of From the Horse's Mouth. My name is Alice Tagura and I am your host. Just a reminder, here we host influential figures that are already making an impact in Africa, only females. Today I have the privilege to sit with Zimbabwe's international human rights lawyer, Madam Beatrice Mtetwa. Welcome, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Alice.
Thank you so much for gracing our platform. Let's dive right into it. What initially drew you to human rights law? Were there specific events or personal experiences that solidified your commitment to this work?
I can't say that I dived into human rights law, at this particular time. I just happened to do law, and there was nothing that drew me to law specifically. It was more a process of elimination. I have a very rural background. I did not have any role models who were female lawyers. Okay. And I went to university in the 70s, so obviously issues of human rights were very, very limited as at that particular time. So I would say that it was only after I started practicing law that I found myself drawn into human rights work. But even then, I didn't look at it as human rights. My background growing up is that I come from a very large polygamous family, and as the oldest in that family, I was always looking out for the underdog, who were basically us children from all the mothers. And so because I was almost always looking after their interests and ensuring that my father's lifestyle did not in any way impact on our upbringing, particularly our right to go to school, etc. I think that probably is what then led me to human rights. I just almost always wanted to help the underdog, and I almost always wanted to challenge authority. I would say that probably is where my human rights background came from, but it wasn't a conscious decision. So I was initially quite surprised when I was regarded as a human rights lawyer, because that's not what I set out to do.
Oh, interesting. How would you characterize the political environment you've worked in? What are its defining characteristics that make it hostile to human rights work?
Again, because I have never really looked at my work as human rights, and I'm not really interested in people's political voices and or affiliation, I've never looked at it from the hostility side, and I'm almost always surprised when I get into trouble, because I will not be looking for trouble. For me, I'll just be doing my work. And then if I get arrested, I'm like, hello, what have I done? Why are you arresting me for doing my work? So I've never consciously looked at the political aspects of my work. I do get caught in the politics of the country, obviously, because I almost always represent the underdog. And because I dive in without looking at the possible dangers, I don't consciously think like, oh, if I do this case, this might happen to me. If I defend this person, this might happen to me. My primary driving force is, does this person need my assistance? Is this the type of case I'm happy to identify with? This person's rights being violated. This is why you've seen me defending people who, in the normal course, would not fit the tag of being, necessarily victims of the political system. Because, as you know, I have actually even represented persons who might have been themselves perpetrators, but who find themselves on the other side. You'll recall, for instance, in 2016, that the war veterans who were fighting the then President Robert Mugabe got into trouble for challenging him and his governance system. And interestingly, when they were arrested and they needed a lawyer, they wanted me to represent them. And I did get into a bit of trouble with a lot of other human rights defenders who felt that, well, they should taste their own medicine, because they had characterized us as human rights defenders as basically running dogs of imperialism. We were pushing Western agendas, etc. So it was interesting for me, when they needed lawyers, that they came to us. And when they came to us, my view was, have their rights been violated? Yes, of course. They have the right to hold opinions. They had the right to address their patron on issues they felt needed to be addressed. And I represented them, although they are ZANU-PF, but their rights to freedom of expression had been violated, and they were as entitled to representation as you would be if someone stops you practicing your journalism.
Okay, wow. How did you respond? That's an interesting incident. How did you respond then to the trouble you were caught in? And were there any consequences?
Not really. I mean, the time, it's quite interesting in that when I think there might be consequences, none actually happen. And when I get into trouble, it is when I least expect it, you know. But for me, I don't look at the consequences. I just look at whether or not I'm effective in what I'm doing. And it's always interesting when you look back. Like right now, I'm doing exactly the same thing, but the people I represented in 2016, 2017 have gone back to looking at my work as being against them, as opposed to my work really being necessary for whoever requires it at that particular time. So you find that the people that we assist as human rights defenders, they look at human rights from a very narrow, subjective perspective, where it is a right if it affects me, but if it affects someone else, you know, it's like someone else is not as entitled to the same right as they are. I guess that's the nature of us human beings, looking at things from our own perspectives and what suits us at any particular time.
Yeah, correct. So, in what ways do you measure the impact of your work in such an environment?
It's very difficult to measure the impact of one's work because I mean I'm doing work that really is not driven by what I think will be the impact. At any given time, for me, the result will be the release of my client if they've been arrested, or the stopping of whatever infraction I feel is being perpetrated on that particular client I'll be dealing with at the particular time. There are times when I see impact, for instance, when I'm successful. There are times when, of course, it's absolutely impossible to say you've been impactful. But I mean, those who have observed have said that the existence of human rights defenders in Zimbabwe have been impactful in the sense that things could have been worse. Whether that is true or not, obviously, is not easy to judge. But I know that there are really lesser cases that no one ever hears about, which I know have had impact on my clients, because they had an intervention they otherwise would not have had. Okay. You know, I remember many years ago, I think it was in the early 90s, I was asked by the Catholic Commission, because these kids had both parents die in quick succession of each other. And they were living in a house that they had not finished, the parents had not finished paying for. Okay. And the person who had who had sold the piece of land on which they built this structure on, wanted to repossess it. So I had to intervene. I remember that the youngest was not even in grade 1 yet, and the other one was just finishing high school. And I went to the house, and I went to this gentleman and who's a land developer, and I said, but you can't kick out the keys. And it turned out that actually he had already sold the property to some people in the diaspora in Forex. And at that time we were still in the Zim dollar era. So, you know, and those people wanted these kids kicked out. And I had to go to court to stop the eviction. After a long process, we ultimately managed to get this man to give them an alternative piece of land, to build a structure there so that these kids could have a place of their own, to have it transferred into their name. Oh. And at the end of that, I felt good. Mm. I felt I had been impactful in that these kids, who otherwise would have had nowhere to go, at least had somewhere to go, somewhere to live. Yeah. And they could, lease out 2 rooms from that structure and make a little bit of income. And it's those kind of cases that never get anywhere near the media, where you feel you've had an impact. And it's those kind of cases that keep me going. I do a lot of family law cases. Again, when I get a good settlement for a woman who would not have been able to afford a lawyer, I feel very good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Okay. What are the primary legal and extra-legal tools that the powerful or the privileged or other actors use to suppress human rights advocacy?
Well, I mean, as a journalist, you will know that to silence you, they will obviously go to the laws that restrict your freedom to do certain things. The freedom, of expression, for instance, what you say might be weaponized against you. But from a lawyer's perspective, the threat to have you disbarred, obviously, is the biggest threat for any lawyer. And that can be done. I mean, in my case, I've had allegations that I have been obstructive. For instance, when I was arrested and locked up at Chikurubi Women's Prison, it was on the basis that I had obstructed the police when they wanted to make an arrest. And, all I did was to go to my client's house when the police surrounded his house and were searching it unlawfully. And when I got there, I demanded to see the search warrant, because you can't just walk into someone's house and start searching without the warrant. And because they did not have a warrant, they then arrested me and threw me in their car and locked me in there while they went around searching in my client's house. Those are the laws they weaponize, where they say you've done something you shouldn't do. As a lawyer, when you call me to say my privacy is being invaded, these people have come in, they say they're police, they've not produced their IDs, they've not produced a warrant, and I come as a lawyer and say, excuse me, first, can I have your IDs? and can I have your search warrant? And they don't produce it, and then they say I'm interfering and obstructing their search. Those are the kind of laws that they will use. Anything to stop you from being effective, basically. Sometimes access is not given to your client deliberately. I've gone to police stations when I'm told that, oh, Alice is being held at this police station, and I get there and they say, oh, no, she's not here. And you're like, well, I mean, can I see your book? Can I see where you record all the people who come in? Oh, you're not entitled to that. And of course, then you have to use other means to find out whether the person is there or not. So I can go around to the cells at the police station and start calling out your name to say, if you are there, please respond.
That's a lot of work.
That kind of thing. You've got to find ways of going around the attempt to stop you doing your work.
Okay. Oh, wow. And how do you navigate the tension between legal avenues and the broader political realities?
Like I said at the beginning, I don't look at any of my work from a political perspective, because my attitude is the practice of law is something I'm entitled to do. So I never go into a case from the perspective that, oh, I must tread carefully because this is politics. For me, is this a law? Is it being applied properly? Is my client in any way being, unlawfully dealt with when one takes into account of the law? So I don't consciously look at the politics of the case. Obviously, I'm not going to not realize that politics comes into the law, because half the time the people I represent will be political actors who will be arrested for political reasons. But that's their politics, not mine. And when I come in from the perspective that I'm doing something that the law allows me to do, and I should not be stopped from doing it, in the same way that the politicians should not be stopped from doing their politicking. And so, more often than not, some of the politicians, especially if they are affected, understand that. It's when the shoe is on the other foot that they don't understand. But generally, I'm not a political animal. I don't do politics. I do law. And my attitude is, you should not politicize my work, because it is not political. Yes, politicians like putting tags on our work that we are not our own masters. We are being pushed to do certain things by other people. I mean, if you get arrested and I come and defend you, and you are being arrested for political reasons, I can never quite understand why anyone will think I'm driving a Western agenda, because you are not arrested by any Western person. You are arrested here in Zimbabwe, and the law I'm seeking to apply is law in Zimbabwe that has been passed by the very people who are now saying I shouldn't use it. If you put clauses in the Constitution that people have certain rights, and when you violate those rights, and I'm there to say, hey, these are rights that are given to these people by the Constitution, I can never understand why someone then says I'm pushing a foreign agenda, because none of the laws that we're applying actually in Zimbabwe right now are foreign. If I say you are entitled to certain freedoms, it is a freedom that has been given to the people of Zimbabwe by the very laws those who will be arresting me put in place. If you don't want people to enjoy them, don't put them in your statutes.
How do you view the role of a lawyer in promoting human rights in a politically hostile environment? Is it primarily legal, or does it extend to activism, advocacy, or even political resistance?
I don't think one can take the activism out. of the kind of cases that we do. I mean, for me, whatever is happening, I think I always look for the bit where there may be violations. So there is a bit of activism there where you are like, that's not how it is supposed to be done in terms of the law. So I will speak out about that and say that, no, this is not how it's supposed to happen. I think you would have seen in the last day or so that I did an open letter to the Judicial Service Commission complaining about the way they are treating candidates at these interviews. We had interviews last week for Labour Court judges, and the commissioners were treating the candidates so badly that I can't imagine any lawyer in their right senses applying for those positions anymore, because they are turning these interviews, which are supposed to be transparent, which are supposed to bring some accountability, which are supposed to bring some democracy into the appointment process. They're treating them as a platform to humiliate candidates. And I felt very strongly that that is not the platform to humiliate. If you think I do not qualify because my background is such that I've done things that disqualify me, deal with me outside the public glare. Okay. Tell me before you shortlisted me that we've got an issue with you, Alice, because you did X, Y, Z before. Don't bring that into the public domain, because everybody is entitled to human dignity. Doesn't matter that you may not agree with them. I mean, most of the magistrates who are being humiliated are magistrates who rule against me virtually all the time. But that doesn't mean they are not entitled to the dignity of their office, to be treated humanely, and basically to be treated as professionals, you know. So you can't take out that activism out of human rights work.
Interesting and powerful. And how would you rate Africa in terms of upholding human rights?
Well, I mean, it's like generally as Africans, we learn all the bad habits from each other. It's like our leaders are part of a trade union, of presidents who teach each other how to be oppressive. And this is why you never hear them really talking against each other.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard SADC complaining about certain things that are happening in Zimbabwe? No. Do you hear SADC leaders saying, why are there, enforced disappearances in Zimbabwe? No. Do you hear them saying, oh, there's supposed to be freedom to demonstrate and to complain about what we don't, agree with? And you know that we can't do that in Zimbabwe. Have you heard a single one of the countries who might themselves allow that process to go on saying, hey, why are you suppressing freedoms that the Constitution say the people should do? So, I mean, Africa is a very bad example of, regional coherence that is meant to preserve the status quo for politicians without necessarily dealing with the problems that we have at home. South Africans right now are so hostile, for instance, towards Zimbabweans because we are flooding South Africa. You would think that would get the South African leadership to say to our leaders in Zimbabwe, can you clean up your act so that your people don't come to us because it's causing problems for us? Do you think they would say that? You would expect them to say that, but they're not saying it. Instead, they will come here, observe our elections, even if the SADC report itself says the elections were not free and fair, there's no follow-up to say, hey, you did not meet our regional standards for free and fair elections, therefore we will not recognize you, we will not recognize the election result. They don't do that. They're just a cacophony of support for each other. That's all they are.
Yeah, it's getting hot. Do you have a support system that you rely on?
Well, I mean, I'm a founder member of Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights and a few other NGOs. We are a very, supportive core group. We support each other. I can go to court with lawyers who are not necessarily from my law firm. We work closely together with each other. And so professionally, I have a very, very good support system. Socially, I have a fantastic group of friends. I have a very hectic social life. I think if I don't have a party to go to on any given weekend, it's a strange weekend. So I've got a very, very good support system, both socially and professionally.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Anything you'd want to get off your chest?
It's an interesting type of job. It is not as lucrative as it would have been if I had chosen just to do mainstream law. I think people who are my age, I mean, I'm closer to 70 than 65. Wow. So I could be very wealthy if I did something else, but would I be happy? Not necessarily. I deal with a lot of wealthy people who are not as happy as I am. I feel that I am very rich spiritually. I'm very rich professionally in that I feel that I've made a difference to people who would not have had a difference made to them. So I would encourage young people not to have dollar signs be their only consideration in what they choose to do. Personal satisfaction really can make a huge difference in your life. Yes, you need to live, but just live an ordinary life. I know Zimbabweans are obsessed with big cars, big homes, big everything, but there's more to life than that, because at the end of the day, at the end of your career, you look back and that big house and big car is not necessarily going to mean anything to you. It won't be any legacy for you. So I would say to young people, whichever sector you are in, do your job with integrity. Do it not so much because you get remunerated, but because it brings you personal satisfaction and also because it makes a difference to someone else.
That's powerful. Okay, as we wrap up, what advice would you give to aspiring human rights lawyers considering working in a similar challenging context?
I would say don't get dragged into the politics of the case. Try and remain as professional as possible. Understand that clients are not your friends. What I see is a lot of young lawyers taking their clients as if they are their buddies and or friends and or relatives. Clients are very, very fickle. One wrong move, you would be shocked that it is that very same client who will be testifying against you before the Law Society for some alleged transgression. So keep your professional distance from clients so that you are able to make professional decisions. I've had many clients over the years, but you'd be surprised at the fact that I actually don't socialize with them, even when they try to kind of make it a social thing, it's very, very important to keep your professional distance from the people you help. And if you have to interact socially, it can be because you don't want to be rude, but don't think that your clients are your buddies. Do not take shortcuts where you'll be getting loans from your client or you'll be borrowing cars from your clients, and don't do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep your professional independence as far away from client as possible so that you are able at all times to give a professional view based on the law as opposed to a view that will be meant to keep your friendship.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was raw, candid. From us, She Glows Africa magazine, to you, Africa. See you next time.